This Granite Hall interview is dedicated to Eric Herndon, 1946 to 2012. A well-liked man and well-respected man.
Oh.
And this is Sarah Herndon, Mary, her daughter, and Jane.
Okay, that was a really nice introduction. That was a surprise.
Good, I like giving surprises.
Mm-hmm.
And the first question I'm gonna ask is, how did you find Round Pond and purchase Granite Hall?
Well, we were really lucky. This was a serendipitous thing. We were living in Barnstead, New Hampshire, and Eric was a social worker. He'd been working with the state and Catholic Charities is where he ended up working for 11 years, and he was ready for a change. And we'd always wanted, he especially had always wanted to own his own business. Even after we graduated from college, we used to look at country stores and stuff occasionally, but never took the plunge. And the kids were 4 and 7, and he saw it in a Maine real estate guide. We'd never heard of Round Pond. We used to go over to, Wells and go to the beach and stuff from New Hampshire, but never up here. So we came up in the fall of 1982, and the store was closed. June Chandler owned it, and she met us here with curlers in her hair, and the realtor brought us in, and look at this building. And we just fell in love with it. It smelled like balsam fir and old buildings, and we just thought, well, let's give it a whirl. Really, we knew nothing about running a retail store, and June said, well, we can help you learn the ropes. They had lived in Ireland for 12 years, St. Croix for 8 before that, and they only owned this for 2 years, and it was a little overwhelming. My story that I tell everyone is, I said, we bought the store from an older couple, and they were 60. Looking back, I'd say, I'll take that any day, but so we sat out in the car and thought about it, and we came in and made her an offer, and she said yes. We put $500 down, and we had no money unless we sold our house in Barnstead. So we were given 6 months, since this was a seasonal business, to sell the house. And then we thought, wow, we'll lose our $500 otherwise. But we went back, put our house on the market, and luckily it sold in about 4 months. And we came over here May 1st, 1983, in a U-Haul truck, our station wagon that Frankie loves to tell the story of us pulling into town.
First time
dog. There wasn't the dog until later.
First time I met you and Eric, you had that big Ford station wagon, 2 little girls,
Yeah.
and the big German Shepherd dog.
We got him once we got here, but salty.
Yeah.
And we had my brother and sister-in-law and their cousins, Pat and Megan. We had my friend Jenny and Nate was a weightlifter, and we all brought all our 7-room cape from New Hampshire upstairs on the dance hall floor, because we had no place else to live but here. And we didn't really think ahead, like what we're going to do, because this building is not winterized. It's just got open underneath, and there's no septic system, but there's a well and there's a holding tank. So we had a learning curve.
How long did you live here before you bought Ramona Hall's place?
We lived here almost 3 years.
Wow.
But every winter we had to get out, and for 3 or 4 months, and we were lucky enough to meet Emily Allen, who lives, Henry and Emily owned the house across the field. He was an ophthalmologist from Boston area. Anyway, she offered us to house sit, and so we could live with no rent. She was so nice. And off we went there, and found out that heating a big old house with oil and electric it was more money than we had been offered a rental down in Chamberlain. I was like, wow, I didn't think of all the utilities. You know, we just didn't have any money. But it was a beautiful spot. I loved that house. It had the sunrise and then the backlit when the moon, you know, when the sun was going down. But so yeah,
back to June Chandler. Remember the one thing she told you she would get rid of right away?
Yeah, she was standing here. Charles and Sandy owned this before, and they bought it from Charles and Sandy Home. And Charles had put in this circular thing where he put penny candy, and then the penny candy was behind the counter. And of course, the kids come in and they go, I want one of those and two of those. And June said it drove her crazy. And she said, well, I'd get rid of the penny candy if I were you. And my comment later was that would have been the kiss of death, because that's what brings people in. And then ice cream, they put the ice cream back in too. So the ice cream had been Fawcett's ice cream parlor for years,
Yep.
but then they didn't have ice cream, Charles and Sandy, and June and Ed chunked out the back room and made that takeout window and got Edward's ice cream. So that brought people in too. But back to when we first arrived, we brought all the things upstairs and everybody slept on the dance hall floor. The cousins, I don't know if you remember because you were a little older, 7.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that feeling of being in a new place and kind of being like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so we all camped out and it was fun. And then Uncle Jim and Aunt Sue and Pat and Megan went home the next day. And here we were in a place we knew nothing about.
Right, that's when the feeling came in.
We sat on the porch and little Mary, who was 7, said to me, I want to go home. And I said, well, this is going to be your home.
Welcome to your home. Oh, what?
And we were all, had been up late and everything, so I took them upstairs to lie down and maybe take a nap, and I heard these girls walking by outside, going down to the shore, little girls chattering away. And I literally took off and ran after them, and it was Danielle Tukey,
Oh, wow.
Beth Hannah's
Yeah.
daughter, and another little girl, maybe her cousin or something. And I said, hi, who are you? We just moved here. And found out they were the exact same age, and Mary was going to go into 2nd grade in May, which I always thought was the worst thing to do to a kid in like the end of the year. And I brought Danielle back. You remember?
Yeah,
meeting
because
her?
I was taking a nap.
Yes.
And you brought a girl upstairs, and I
embarrassing.
remember being like, like, I think I was sitting in bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little embarrassed. But Danielle ended up being a really good friend of mine for many years. So it all worked out.
And she's back in town, too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you went to school, and Danielle was there.
Yeah.
So it turned.
No, we were friends.
So
I went
it
to her
wasn't
house
as
a lot.
bad. Looking back, I said it was the best thing, because if she'd waited all summer knowing she was going to school in the fall, she'd have been maybe not married, but nervous. You would have
No, I
done
would have
fine.
been nervous.
And so this way, she knew the kids. She was in school for about 5 weeks, and so that's how we started here. And where do we go from there?
He's going to ask the next question.
Well, we ended up house sitting for those winters, and then Pammy Hall would come in, and Ramona, and Pammy told me that she was living in Ramona's house because Ramona had married Ken Sawyer. And so she implied that I heard the house was going to be for sale, Pammy's house and Ramona's house. But I was too embarrassed to ask Ramona or Pam, because I thought she might want to live there. That was her house growing up, and I didn't understand. And finally she came to the ice cream window, and I said, is your mom going to be selling that house? She said, yeah, I'm just staying here while we're building our house. So that, after 3 years, we found a place to live by talking to Ramona and buying that house.
Good deal.
Yeah. You might remember moving there. But we went to Ireland first.
The history of Fawcett's ice cream parlor, the dance hall, moving picture shows.
Well, I've been talking about this history for 40 years.
Yeah, it was like, wow.
No. First,
In a good way.
First, I heard the story of Charles and Sandy. Sandy growing up being with the auctioneer's family, and Charles being the summer boy, and they saved this building. It was falling in, and it was probably going to be used for a fire burn or something.
This was in the 70s.
Yeah, 1972.
Yeah.
They bought it from whoever bought it from Gordon Fawcett.
Wasn't it? Gordon Fawcett?
They didn't buy it from him. It was somebody who owned it, maybe.
Really?
Yep.
I can't remember now. Charles just came in recently, and he
Yeah.
said he walked in here at that time, and whoever was owning it was in here and was just like, this place is a mess, I'm gonna like take it down or something. And Charles was like, hold on a second, and basically like offered to buy it right
Yeah,
then.
for a song.
Yeah.
Or a song now, anyway.
Well.
Not probably for them.
Yeah.
And so he saved it in Sandy, but they jacked it up and they put in a cement,
Did a lot of
very
work to it, I
sturdy.
remember that.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
he said that when the people were dancing upstairs, there was like 150 people and the building would shake, and they thought it was going to collapse, or it could have collapsed, which would. But to go farther back, it was built, we found out from Bethia reading Arthur Cox's diaries in 1873. We'd been waiting for years to find out exactly when it was built. And we'd gone to the deeds and gotten the records, but you only go back so far, and I couldn't even read them back in the 1800s. But so it was built by the Hines family. Haywood's house right behind us.
Mhm.
He lived to 100. And it was there was a billiard table in the back room, and in the front room it said fruit and confectionery. And the men from the granite quarries, there were a lot of granite quarries here in the 1800s, would come down, and there was a dance hall upstairs. And then later on in the late 1800s, early 1900s, I guess it must have been, when they had silent movies, and they had all sorts of things. In the back room there was a barber shop, the pool table, two pool tables, and in the front room there ended up being Pearlie Fawcett bought it from the Smiths. William Smith owned it for a while, Bill Smith's grandfather, and it became Fawcett's Ice Cream Parlor.
That's what I remember as
Yeah.
a small kid. My father tells me a story when he was a kid, and some of the boys he hung out with, when they were having dances upstairs here, some of the Loud Islanders would come here with quite a bit to drink.
Yeah,
And he had quite a few laughs about that.
yeah. I think it was kind of a rowdy place outside.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Ruth Crook lived across the street, and my mother ended up buying her house, and she was a young mother and had 4 kids sleeping over there, and she'd sneak over to the dances, she told me, and they had benches lined up on either side of the floor up there. And when she came in, she said all the upright ladies would look at her askance, like, you left your children home. And then one day, Billy Crook was 4 years old, and he woke up and he was missing his mom, and he came over here in his pajamas, and she was mortified. He was looking for his mom. And the other people, I'd heard that they had, over the years, so many people have told me who played upstairs. My grandfather played the fiddle and the drum, and there's the original piano still up there, and I would write everything on little scraps of paper, which the girls know I do all the time, and it's all over at the house, this list of people. And they played foxtrots, waltzes, and the Lady of the Lake. The Lady of the Lake always came up in the stories. And apparently the men were on one side and the women on another of the room, and the men would go over and ask a woman to dance. It sounds very formal. And
So the Lady of Lake was a dance, or it
Yeah.
was a song too that went with the dance.
it was actually a contra dance.
Kind of old
Yeah.
school.
It was a line dance. And Julie and Fred played it on the first
So
millennium
do
New
they know
Year's
the
Eve.
dance?
Yeah,
That would be fun. Too.
and they did it upstairs at
Yeah.
2000. But that was classic. You'd hear about that. I don't hear as many stories anymore. You know why? 40
Somebody
years
came
in, a lot of these people are dead now.
Yeah,
They
some
passed.
I mean, it wasn't the people that did it. It was they were telling about people they knew that.
Yeah.
some older man came in, and I wish that I had gotten his name, but that always happens. And he had told a story about it was getting quite rowdy up there, and that things were smashed. Like there was a fight, and instruments were like taken out, and he was sort of telling this whole
Probably
story.
they were fighting over who's gonna dance with a certain girl. Probably
Might have
that's
been.
usually how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two guys liking the same girl.
Yep, that could have been it.
Leonard, you remember Leonard
That still
Dozier?
goes on today too.
Yes, you've been involved in a few, I'm sure.
Leonard Dozier came in once and he told me a story and he put it on a cassette tape and he called it Music at Granite Hall. And it was this story of, I guess it was before Pearlie Fawcett. The owner was seeing somebody else's wife and the man chased them down to Granite Hall and they had a little scuffle or kertuffle or a fight or whatever you call it. And I've got to find this tape, and if anybody has a cassette player, we can listen to it. Music
got
at
rocked.
Granite Hall.
We gotta do that.
Yeah.
Village life.
There was a lot of,
Was there roller skating? When did that happen? Do you know? 'Cause
Well,
that's funny to imagine roller skating
probably
up there.
Wow.
the 20s and 30s, maybe. Yeah, there was roller skating.
Probably the same time as the
There were concerts, and from the Washington
used
School.
to have the 8th grade graduation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
In
Oh,
my-
yeah.
In my dad's time.
Graduation, I didn't have that.
Did he graduate up there?
Yes.
Nice.
I think Bethia. You know, but the school Washington School had some kind of band with Bruce Cunningham and William Smith.
Yep, I have a
Bethia-
picture. We can put a
Bethia
picture in
was,
later.
Part of that, and you know, a lot of the local kids.
Bill Smith
I've
with the
seen
big-
pictures of it. You know,
It's right
kinda
there.
Cool.
Yep.
the graduation
No, the band.
of the band. Yeah,
It
was-
fun to have pictures of the 8th grade graduation.
Yeah.
The Weatherbys, Mr. and Mrs. Carrie Weatherby and somebody, Fritz or somebody, Weatherby, were the music teachers.
Was she?
And
Was
I
she
have that
the
in a
one that
picture.
lived where Bishop Blanchard?
I don't know where she lived.
Where Bishop Blanchard's place is on the back shore.
Point.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
Yeah.
So when Mary and Jane were little, if I can jump ahead to the 80s, kids would come in and buy penny candy, and we always had I want some candy, and we'd let them have a little candy, but you didn't want to have you eating candy all the time. So we'd always be saying, well, these kids are on vacation and it's very special. They're only here for a week, but you're here every day, so you maybe get 1 or 2 pieces a day. And it was always this little battle about why they couldn't have candy all the time. And 3 years later, we moved out and moved across the street. And when we were moving Mary's bureau up in the corner up here, we found all these candy wrappers behind the bureau because Mary was down
I was
here.
like a little squirrel.
Was you sneaking that candy?
You betcha.
I was, and it's funny, I vaguely remember doing that, but my memory, because I was caught, was I had a little kid's purse. I think it was black and shiny. Do you remember those purses we had? 2 dress-up purses. And I came down and I filled the purse with candy, and I was over there behind the counter walking, and I was caught by you or Dad, and you were like, open the purse, and I was like,
Wouldn't have been me.
I was mortified. So like I did these things, but getting caught was like the worst thing ever. I remember just turning like bright
Seems
red.
like that's the story of a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Frankie has a question on there about life advice. Always tell the truth.
Well,
I don't know about that, but
I was gonna. One of my questions, or one of Russ's questions,
Oh, Russ had the
Russ
questions.
behind the camera here. Let's not leave him out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Who buys the most penny candy, adults or kids?
I had to think about that one, but I think it's kids.
I think it's kids.
It's kids. But there are adults that come in like for very specific things like licorice and peppermint.
Nonpareils.
And yeah, and the chocolates, and they get really into it.
You get
What's the favorite?
Ooh.
What's the most?
Well,
big-
you said old men on there, right? So old men I would think of as licorice. You said, is it old men or kids?
Oh,
that
that's
spearmint
That's
leaves
politically
and,
incorrect.
and the orange slices also. The
That's
orange
the favorite
things.
of-
of older people. They get
Yeah.
the spearmint leaves, the
Yeah.
big chunky
And
ones. I
spice
really
drops.
like those. Spice
So it
drops.
was
That
peanut
kind of
butter
flavors.
logs, nonpareils, smooth and melties, the raspberries.
And then the
These-
kids get all the sour gummies.
Yeah.
But
and
I'll
then
tell you what
chocolates.
I thought of was that the kids buy most of the candy, but then you get the 20-somethings in here who are just out of their childhood, but they really want to be in it still, and they come in and they like reminisce, and
Yes,
they're like,
very
we used to
nostalgic.
come in here, and you know, they're not that old, and then they buy like a ton of candy because they have their own money now, so they're kind of
Right.
like, yes, I can buy like $20 worth of
Finally
candy.
get more than 50
Yeah.
cents to spend here.
How about the peanuts?
Well,
Peanuts.
peanuts are quietly popular. Like you don't notice, but you have to refill the peanut machine a lot. We have one fellow that comes in
Yep.
for the last few years and comes just for those peanuts, and it's like his snack every day.
We call him the
Love to
Peanut
see it.
Man.
We call him the peanut
Wow.
man.
We know who he is.
It's a really
but
original name.
Yeah.
I know Albert
Is the
Curtis
peanut
down
man.
there in
Someone just asked
New
about
Harbor
him.
used to like to stop here and get a bag
Peanuts.
of peanuts.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Somebody came in and a younger man, and he was really excited to see the machine, and he looked at it and was like, I can fix this up for you if you ever actually want to roast peanuts. And then Charles came in, Holmes, and talked a lot about how he had it roasting and the smell and everything. And so there's a possibility that we could start roasting peanuts, but that seems a little out of my wheelhouse.
We learned that from Charles, and
Yes.
he brought this whole thing in. It's a beautiful old peanut machine over here. You could take a picture. Yeah, and we
the
did
time to
roast it
roast
for a while, but the thing that we worried about was it. We were worried about fire.
Yeah.
It started. The old wiring started smelling that, and he had
Oh.
a great big thing that was for hot peanuts. That beautiful case
That's
we
what
have
the
in the barn.
Kid said is he could rewire it. He is what he said. He could get it
Oh,
going.
okay,
But I
'cause
didn't take it. I
the
think I
old-
have his number somewhere.
It goes around and around and around, and Charles
Very
roasted him.
dusty and yeah.
Yeah. But
What's the best thing about running the store?
oh,
I have my
it's just so many good stories. We talk to so many people.
Made thousands of
I
friends.
have
all
I have
from all over the
100,000
place.
stories floating around in my brain with these wonderful stories of what people have told me, and I take notes, and I have notebooks
emotional.
full of all the. They love this store. It's not a
Yes.
store. It's a feeling, and they've
It's
people
a-
have come
it's
for
a-
years.
Like a round pond, really.
Yeah, it's like a destination. They wear a Granite Hall hat and the Keys and Florida Keys, and someone will come up and say, "I've been there." You know, it's amazing the serendipitous things that happen. But don't you think?
I think
it's
because
the people.
I came here as a kid. I don't know if it's the same way with you, but it's wrapped up in my identity in this place that I live. So like I introduce myself and I'll be like, I'm so and so. Okay, and then I'm like, we run Granite Hall. Oh, you run Granite Hall. Like basically everybody knows Granite Hall, and I can easily get a reaction from that. And so that I just
And they go,
feel
"Oh,
like
we
that's
love that store."
a part of me, and it probably helped that I we lived upstairs and we ate dinner in the kitchen, and it was just like my childhood. I was around here, and I would guess it's the same for you, but it you feel it's like a tiny claim to fame type of thing.
It's
and
in your blood.
it's in our blood.
It's your
Yeah.
heritage.
Yeah.
It's your identity.
Yes.
Do you remember the galley? Mm-hmm. Tell them about
Pulled
eating
down
there. Yeah.
Table.
Dad.
We had a galley set up in the kitchen, and it had a little plaque that said
The galley.
the galley, like on a boat. And our father built a table that would fold up into the wall.
It was
so
a
we'd
tiny
pull it
little
down.
table.
Tiny table, yeah. So we'd pull it down for our meals, and then you'd put it back up so they could be scooping ice cream.
You probably
the kitchen's
sat on
very small.
milk crates or something. It was like
No,
great.
yeah, probably.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'd eat our food.
Looks like he's got another question.
I do. I'm gonna.
Throw it
Have
our
you
way.
had any famous customers in here besides yourselves?
I mean, we're pretty
We had-
famous. But
You are.
My
You are
first famous customer. I'll tell that story.
Okay.
We were closed, and I was cleaning up in the takeout window, and someone came and rang the bell. And I'll always wait on somebody after hours because
That's old school.
right. And
Always does that.
so you open the window, and it was a man and a woman, and they'd come in on a boat, and I was frozen. I was sure it was Superman, and I just got the order, and I kept going in my head. Shall I say something? Shall I say something? Oh, they don't want to be noticed. Oh, I want to say something. Here's the ice cream, and they left. And I was like, oh!
Christopher Reeve.
It was Christopher. And then he walked up to King Row, and then the whole story around town the next week was Superman was in town, and I was like, I was right, and I never said anything.
Guess what? I walked right by him on the town end, and I got thinking,
You were there?
geez, I've seen this guy somewhere before. And then a few hours later, the kids in town said, hey, Superman was in town, Christopher Reeve.
Yeah, you didn't speak to him either, huh?
Superman was here.
Come off a sailboat, Round Pond Harbor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What year do you think that was?
Oh, gosh,
Well, it was before he got
he...
injured,
yeah.
obviously, but
Yeah. 80?
In the 80s.
yeah, I would say in the 1980s sometime.
I'm turning it off.
Seven or
Keeps
something?
dinging.
Yeah, maybe a little bit before that even.
Thank you.
There's been other famous actors who live in the area who've come up to the window, and I was trying to remember. It was like,
Is
I'm not
it
gonna say.
Gabriel Byrne?
Yeah, he came.
He's around Round Pond a lot.
Yep.
But
I wouldn't know him.
yeah,
I don't
he's
know
in a
these
lot
new
of
actors.
movies. You'd have to look him
He's
up.
not even that new. He's like older than us. Yeah, there's
I've
been
had-
other people who've come in.
We think of actors, but I've had some people that were, one man was a scientist, and often when people are retired, they're traveling and their wives come in and shop and the men are hanging around. And so we get talking and, they want to tell you what they did. And this one man had to do with discovering Lyme disease. And
Wow.
gosh, I can't remember the story totally, but I didn't know a lot about Lyme disease, and this was back probably in the 80s, 90s. And then another man came in, and it turned out that he wrote the Black Stallion series of books. But I never read animal books when I was a kid because they always upset me. They were always sad. So I'd never read them. And I made the faux pas of saying, oh, there was a movie. And I don't think I gave him the right reaction. Later on, I found out he'd written umpteen. His name was Walter Farley, I think. He summered in Booth Bay.
Well, I've heard that name.
And he wrote this long series of did you read those, Russie? The Black Stallion.
He wanted to be recognized for the book.
How'd you miss that? You usually
I don't know, I'm
read
sorry, Frank, I'll go read it.
Gonna get on
The
that.
horses.
Dropped the ball on that one.
They're kids' books, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's
Short.
yeah,
You'll
good
be
to-
done in no
chapter
time.
books.
That's funny.
Got a couple questions to throw at your daughters.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best thing about growing up in Round Pond?
Growing up in
Round Pond. is
We talk about this a lot.
Pretty much the best.
We had very different experiences growing up here.
Yes.
And Jane constantly teases me about my basically not remembering anyone around here. But it's not that I don't remember him, so I don't remember anyone.
You were
But-
reading.
wasn't
You were
as-
reading behind the counter on the
Yeah.
floor.
I was reading behind the counter.
I had
she
a
was
different
getting the
childhood.
principal awards.
Well,
and,
yeah,
yeah.
that wasn't
just
part of growing up in Round Pond. My main memories of when I was younger and I didn't need to be here, which I guess I didn't a lot, was that we could be gone all day. Like it was the outdoor playground for us. And I had a couple friends who came up in the summer. Bishop Blanchard's
Ellen
granddaughter Ellen was
Blanchard.
one of them that I hung out with a lot. And Tucker, Bradford, probably. We went out and did things a lot. The Bradfords live up the road. And we'd start at one end of the harbor and we'd climb around the
Counter.
Yeah. No, this was a little.
Mary was reading on the floor, but Jane, 4, 5, and 6, here's the counter, and I'm waiting on people, and she's in front of me, and I kept going, boop, moving Jane, waiting on people, and then she always wanted to play store. She was the girl that went beep, 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 on her cash register that we never had. We never had one. That was disappointing to her. But
Yep. And then later on, as we got older, Round Pond was very fun and again kind of rowdy. It was a rowdy group,
For
and
her.
we would be at the harbor a lot all night long, and it was pretty.
Round Pond is a great.
I didn't know about that either.
To live.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah.
And it seems like for many generations, You had
Many
your fun
generations,
time. We had our
yes.
fun times.
Well, our kids, we tell our kids stories, and at least my kids sort of recognize that. Penelope constantly talks about sort of how lucky she is to have this place, and she considers herself a round ponder even though she didn't really grow up here, and feels very ownership of it, and but recognizes how lucky she is to be here, which is sweet.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
good.
The next
Very-
generation of my 4 grandchildren, Frankie, are totally, into what you just said, the Round Pond Village, because they would all go down to the shore, and you've probably seen them being down at your place, jumping
Yes.
into the water.
They were down
when
there
they're in
almost
junior
daily
high.
down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They-
Just like we were when we were kids.
Yeah.
I mean, the harbor was where the action is in
Oh,
town.
harbor is the place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So their
Jumping off the dock.
mothers worked here at that point. This is after Eric died. You started working here.
Yeah.
Like Willie was 3, and they grew up having to come to work here, and so they were down there just like the girls. And their biggest thing was jumping off the
I got
dock.
the biggest kick out of you, oh boy. Swimming down there, showing off in front of the girls down there, and I got
Otis.
some things never change in life. It doesn't matter what generation.
The boys are always showing off.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Showing the moves.
Nellie and Will would do, they're close, the close cousins. They're all close, and they would do these freezing water dips, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
I'd take them out to
pretty good
Monhegan.
spot to grow up.
Sure is.
Yep.
I have one other story about being here in the store when I was little, the things I did. I went upstairs with friends. It wasn't you, I don't think. And we dressed up because they had a lot more Irish woolens, and so they had all the capes and the hats and everything. We still have some of it. And we had mannequins put around with things on them. And so we went up and we put them all over us and draped so you couldn't tell who we were, and we stood very still. And then we'd wait for customers to come up, and then we'd move a little bit, and we made people scream.
Hey, they do this on
wow.
reels now.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen them
Yeah.
come out?
And I had this small feeling I felt bad, but also it was so fun. And so we would do it, and then I'd be like, okay, we probably should stop. But then another person would come up, and you'd be like, and you'd stay really still, and then you'd move, and they'd be like, oh my god!
Oh wow. Yeah.
That was the worst thing I did, honestly.
Oh boy.
I ate candy and I scared customers. Pretty much
Okay,
it.
Jane, you're on.
So girls, did you always want to work in the store?
No, this is what you can tell about your other
No.
jobs.
So much so that when I was 14 and first got a job, I went straight to the harbor. I did one season at Anchor Inn making salads, but then I ended up
Ditto.
at Buddy's
Oh, I forgot
Lobster
that.
Shack for
Round
how
Pond
many
Lobster
years?
Girl.
Round
She was
Pond
one of the
Lobster.
Round Pond
I know,
Lobster
your
Girls. Worked
family.
for Bud for a long time.
Long
didn't you?
time. How many years we were trying
Well,
to
I
figure it
forgot-
out?
I You worked, I
4-ish
think,
years.
4.
Yeah.
But I forgot about the salad girl because I always think Mary did that. But
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
thing about
That-
everybody that worked for Bud, he's so laid back and easygoing. There was never any complaints from anybody working for Bud.
No, how could you complain?
Yeah.
You just had to boil them alive and love it.
Yeah.
All you had to do.
Jane worked with Emily Mack for 4 years, right?
Yep.
She worked-
Kelly Crockett and Lauren Bradley for a while, and
Yeah.
He had a number of girls working there.
Yep.
I mean, wow. for
Diana
years.
Templeton for
And
a
of course,
little
my
while.
younger brother run that for 7 years before Bud come
Before.
along. Dana.
Yeah, I forgot that.
Yep.
Oh, I
Yeah.
forgot that. I remembered the restaurant. Didn't he
Yeah.
run a restaurant?
And then he went to the restoration
That's for
and
the restaurant.
renamed that the Chart House.
Right.
And now it's the Tempered Soul and
Contented Soul.
Yeah.
And they had to move because
yep,
of
because
the
of the storm. Big
storm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Mary,
Yeah.
where'd you work?
I worked at the Anchor Inn. Then
Yeah.
I
Did you
didn't.
waitress?
No, I did salads and I bussed some, and I wasn't particularly invested for sure. First time job, I was like, oh, I can't just do whatever I want all summer. I have to go and work. And you'd come out, your hands would have that particular smell after you've been cutting up vegetables and making salads all day. I was like,
It was really
But-
after.
And Jean wanted you to stay into the fall.
well, I was gonna say, yeah. Now that I'm running a store, and I'm dealing with younger people working for us. You know, we mostly have age 14 to 18 or something working for us. I look back on the bosses that I had in the past, and I have a greater appreciation for their stresses and how they must have felt when at the time I was like, oh, yeah, I got to go to college. Sorry, I forgot to tell you that to Jean. And Jean was like, what? You're leaving? Like, I have to now fill in all these shifts.
You
and I
didn't
was
tell
like,
me in advance.
I just thought, what's your problem? Why are you so mad at me? And now I can totally understand why she felt so upset.
One thing we've
I should
been
apologize to her.
right. She's come here before. One thing we've always done over the years is in hiring people, and Mary is kind of now taken over the employee of hiring and scheduling and so forth, while Jane does the buying and displaying. Well, we always were trying to be flexible because these kids are young and they're teenagers, and you know, if they come, you can't expect them to work a 40-hour week even though you need them, because they have teenage lives. They want to go to the beach and they want to go with their family to the family vacation for the weekend or something. So they were always telling us, well, I won't be here then. And we think, but either
How
we'd
many,
find,
young people have you hired over the 40 years? Local kids, it's been a lot.
oh my gosh. So over 80, I'd count at this point. But for the first 4 years, Eric and I did it by ourselves. We were open every day, the minute we opened, till 9 at night with these 2 little kids. We were trying to juggle bringing them to swimming lessons at Biscay Pond. And we also sold hamburgers and hot
I remember
dogs,
that. Yes.
grilled cheese sandwiches, tuna sandwiches. We made milkshakes.
How did you do that? I don't even
They
know.
had brought, June and Ed Chandler had bought the
They
food
were
back
nice
in.
people. I liked
Yeah,
them a lot.
yeah, he was a great.
One
Right.
thing I remember, the first couple of years that you and Eric were running the place, I remember one comment he said to me. He says, "Wow, we made $100 today." In the early days,
Oh.
because you
That was big
You know-
news.
You know, the
that was a comment
They
he
made-
made, and I kind of chuckled about
Did
that.
I
that
thi-
seem like a lot? I mean, a little to you at the time, or
Well, I mean, look at the place now. It's just a booming place.
yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
oh,
It's
it
funny.
was
But at the time,
hand to
Grand
mouth.
Central Station here now.
We heard what they made. I think she made something like $6,000 that summer, before whatever it was. But I didn't get the concept that, like that we'll get by on that. You had all your expenses. You had your mortgage. We had the building cost $52,000. We had a $500 mortgage. That was like beyond belief. But it was only for 5 years that Chandler's took the mortgage back, and so in 5 years it was paid off. Thank goodness. But you know, you don't, when you take in, you grow something, you don't make that. You only make it like a third. So it was pretty hand to mouth. But so
$100.
one day
Yeah, he said that to me. We
They-
chuckled.
we'd go
Were you
off.
getting a scoop of vanilla and a scoop of chocolate from him?
Probably.
That's what you always
Just
thought,
a
I
little
remember.
general conversation with him, and
Right.
I remember him being so happy when you got married.
Oh yes. And you
Yes.
drove your boat by the whole reception.
We took some pictures.
Yep.
That was fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Up on
Yeah.
the
That was a good
Fosters.
day in Round Pond.
He liked that. Yeah, we all walked down from the Brown Church.
Bobby Ives.
All the way to the
Bobby
port.
Ives married both of them,
Yep.
which was nice. Mary was married in the Lupin Field. Jane was married in the Brown Church. She took the
My
Then
parents
walk
were
down.
married in the Brown Church. And all of us boys were baptized in the Brown Church. But I went to Sunday school in the White Church.
right,
Okay, that
because
was-
the Brown
that was
Church
a real
wasn't a
church.
year round.
The first Sunday school I ever had, me and Bud, was up to Musconga's Community Club
Oh.
for about 1 year.
Wait, where's that? That's
Up above Musconga, you go up on 32. You see
Yeah.
the little community building there?
Yep.
Right there.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. That was a while ago, back when President Kennedy was
Yeah.
still alive. So that's how long ago that was.
So back to the, I have to finish my story.
Kind of off the road here a little bit.
That's right.
Back to the having food, we had our 4 years, nobody. So if one of us had to take the girls somewhere or go somewhere and grab milk, we always had to run to King Row, still do. Come back and the other one would say, we got hit, like we're waiting on somebody here and the ice cream bell rang. Can you imagine now, with the lines at night out here? But finally, around 1987, we hired your cousin, Angela Poland, who was 16 and gorgeous. And I remember she'd be washing the windows out here on the ladder and people would be slowed down looking at her. She was such a pretty girl.
Yeah,
And the next year we had, is that not correct?
No.
And next year we had Phyllis Coggins, no, Sasha Werner.
Yep.
Sasha worked by herself and she was a little dynamo. And then we had Phyllis Coggins and Sasha worked together for about 3 years, and Phyllis stayed on. And that was the beginning of gradually building up to all these teenagers. Crystal came in maybe around year 7 or something, Crystal McLaughlin.
Yep.
And she worked with us for 20 years.
Wow.
And off and on, she mostly on, but she did other jobs too. And when Eric got more sick with his chronic diseases and would spend time in the hospital, especially the one time at Maine Med for 11 days, she just ran the place for us. She took over, and it was in the fall. And I remember she took the awning down, but she didn't know that the awning, you just untie the ropes. She took that whole metal frame off the wall,
Oh no,
which
really? I
weighs
didn't know that.
tons. She thought that's how you took the
Poor
awning down.
Crystal.
Yeah. But she saved our lives
I mean,
for
she
many
was
years.
pretty amazing, and
Yeah, she managed
Was
the
there
place.
even conversations with her like, "We're gonna have you take over and run right now"? I felt like it was just sort of happened where we'd
she
be
was
like,
such-
we'd be gone. And-
Well, when you go to the hospital,
well, that's what I mean.
You
Like,
just go to the
she just
hospital.
stepped up.
Where is the girl today? I haven't seen her for a long
oh, she's got a business of her own. She and Annie Leck
Yep.
own Barn Door Bakery, and they run the coffee shop. Crystal runs the coffee shop in the
Yeah.
bookstore.
Barn Door
Place has got a
Breakfast.
good reputation.
And Barn Door
too.
Breakfast, the restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah, they run all of that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Wow.
they are co-partners.
it's a huge, business.
My very first
Right, she's
person that rang the bell and ordered food was Georgia Lehman.
Well,
She ordered a tuna fish sandwich, and just because this is my style, I didn't even have the tuna fish made up yet because I was like the first day. And she told me later, I told her this, that I had to make, she said, I thought it took an awfully long time.
so was you a little stressed out with that or
Oh,
what?
you betcha. if you ever ask the life advice, my first thing is
Let me just make that tuna.
Yeah.
prepare in
Take
advance,
it all in
be
stride
ready.
over a tuna fish sandwich, huh?
I'd never worked in a restaurant in my life. I didn't
Sometimes I
know
feel like
anything.
that's how you accomplish things. If you go in and you like know too much, then you're like, well, this isn't gonna work. This is
Oh,
too
yeah.
hard. But you go in, you don't know, you just do it.
I remember thinking,
So if
well, if it doesn't work, he didn't want to keep being a social worker. We'll go up to Augusta and get jobs with the state. I used to work for the state in New Hampshire, and we'll just figure it out. But everything, when you're young, you just go with it.
Here's what I think we hear about all the people who've worked here over the years is that when mom and dad ran the store and they hired these teenagers, they were these amazing influences, presence in their lives. And people come back through the years over and over and just talk about the support, advice, love they got from my parents. And like, it was really important to them when they worked here, and they recognize it and they come back and say it over and over again. And Jane and I, we can only hope that we give some of that. You know, we're different people, but we try to emulate that in some way. Because we talk about this being a summer camp / therapy place for all these kids. They come and they're just, they're processing everything. And teenagers nowadays, they seem to want to process a lot. And they need a
You're the
space.
therapist.
And it ends up being our kitchen a lot of the time.
And they come back. You know, the Mathesons and
Yeah.
all the past employees, they move on to the coffee shop, and then they all come down like sparrows, and
Same way.
and they
with-
hang out in our kitchen here.
Same way with the people that get down to have a lobster. I mean, they always stop here and have their dessert on the way home.
Yeah.
And, You know, the apple don't fall from the tree, and you girls put your heart and soul in this place every day.
Gotta do
They,
it.
they sure do.
And my
Work
next
hard.
question is the best thing about owning Granite Hall.
Gosh, I feel like we've said a lot of it. I'd say it's getting to know the community is a big part of it. And also the nice peaceful winters that we get to have when the store's closed.
Sort of.
Not
You
so
girls
peaceful
have
for
made
Jane.
Thousands
Mary.
of friends all
Yeah.
over the whole United States, around the world.
Probably, yes.
I know, that's
especially
People
funny to
visiting.
think about, the people who visit
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the connections.
Yeah.
Also the
Yeah.
flexibility of running a family business where there's always some family member to pick up the pieces. Yeah.
It's nice to be together here. I mean-
Granite Hall is such a happy place for so many people.
Yes, it is. It is. They come in, as we said before, and just tell us all the time. Even the parents will come back and they say, "Oh, we used to bring our kids here all the time when they were little, and you know what? We're going to bring them some candy because they still love it. They're in their 30s now, you know." And then a lot of people would come in to me and say, "Do you remember what my kids buy? Can you tell me what they buy?" And I'm thinking, you think I'm going to remember out of thousands of kids? But they all think they're so, you know, everybody is important and I'll remember everything.
I know the summer people, when they come here, they all look forward to coming to Granite Hall.
Yeah.
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 It's like the
Destination.
first
You
place
get
they
that.
go to.
Yeah.
Jane made a website years ago, and then people will, well, you guys are on Instagram and Facebook. They take care of that, all this technology. And people will comment all the time, "Oh, we're so happy you're going to open," or Jane will go through and display what we have, and people will come in, "I want to buy what I saw on Instagram or Facebook." And
Right.
the COVID year, she did a thing where she made it known that she'd be a personal shopper. And she went around
That's a good idea.
with a
We should do that more.
camera, but also people would call and they'd say, "I'm looking for something, a present for so and so," and she'd show them on the camera things, right,
And then ship them out.
and ship it out.
A very special place for so many.
Yes, it is.
What's the best piece of advice you would give?
Huh?
To
Do you want my list, Frankie?
Anyone.
Frankie?
Best piece of advice you would.
Frankie, that's not the question, is it?
Well, I don't know if I
Well,
said it quite the way
I know
you
the
did.
question that I want to ask.
You do.
Yes, I sure do.
Okay, I will back
What's
off
the
and
best
let you.
advice that you were what's the best advice that you were ever told?
Oh, ever told by somebody else.
Somebody else, so this, yeah,
Okay, that's a difference.
big difference.
Well,
Let me check this out.
Well, one thing that we talk about all the time is something that our father always talked about. It's kind of connected to this store, which is just do one thing. And it kind of can apply to anything in life. But
Oh my gosh,
with the
yes.
store and everything you have to do, it's very overwhelming. So if you just think of it as like, I've just got to move this one display here. And then the next thing you do, one thing. Just do one thing. I think
Right.
of that so much, and it gets you through getting everything done if you just think of it smaller pieces.
Especially in April when we're setting it up and
Yes.
it's a disaster.
Yes.
We're trying to do floors and clean and price things and set it up. But
Yeah.
if anybody's ever come in, then you can't imagine it's going to turn into a store. And I would go off and go to Florida and bring my mother home. And I would leave him opening the store by himself. She lived in Florida half a year, and I'd drive her back and forth. And
Just do one thing.
and he would be like, "Oh," and he'd say, walk in, and just what Jane said, "I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I think I'll move this piece of paper." And you know, then you turn around and you wash that piece of glass, and then
little
you
things.
take a jar out and start washing the jars, and you just turn around and do whatever faces you. Just do one thing. That's great advice.
So
I
this
took the
is-
question the wrong way though.
Okay.
This,
I was
but
gonna
you could
say-
tell him what I told Otis in the car.
learn everything you can And have fun too.
Oh, it was a little longer in the front, going on what you should do, but yeah, in the very end.
Basically it. Learn everything
And
you
with-
can and have fun.
And
too.
with Nellie, my youngest granddaughter, I'm always teasing her, and my life advice is, and wear sunscreen. And
Wear sunscreen.
and she's always liking to, sunbathe and everything, and I'm kidding
He
her
always
about that.
wears Sunscreen. I know.
My current advice, I know you're asking what was given to me, I don't know, but my current advice was I have my whole life recurring dreams, nightmares, that my mother had and my brother had and probably other people have, is I'm late, I'm lost, and I don't have my work done. And that's sort of an example like in college or in school where you haven't got your homework done, but it applies to everything in life, including this interview where I didn't prepare and couldn't find the pictures yet. And the one for writing up the story about old Bristol days, I asked her for a reprieve and get an extra day, is to do your homework and to do it soon and to prepare.
Don't procrastinate.
Don't procrastinate. I'm a procrastinator. And to get somewhere early, arrive on time. My husband used to say, that was his advice. If you can be 15 minutes late, you can be 15 minutes early, because he would be waiting outside when he had a social work appointment and just wait, and I would be
Two
late.
things that Dad said.
Right.
Good
Oh, he had a good advice.
Like that.
So all my advice is the stuff that I haven't done. Still don't do, but
Don't do it.
I did wear sunscreen. That's a good one.
Thanks, Russ, for helping me out with that. I struggled with that one a little bit. Not only half.
To be kind to everybody, to listen, that's hard for me. To actually listen. To be in the presence with your kid, present, I mean.
Yeah.
All the stuff we don't do.
What's the secret for a happy life?
Sense of humor.
It's a good one.
What do you think?
That's a
Gotta have
totally
it for
right.
like every
Yeah.
scenario.
Be positive, be optimistic. We had an employee, Aspen Dyer, who worked for us for 3 years, and her advice, well, it wasn't advice, it was just how she always, you'd tell her something, and you might be worried about something, and she'd just always say, it's all good. And we've quoted that over and over, like something comes up, you're feeling, it's all good, it's
All
okay.
good.
Yeah.
It generally is. Yeah.
What would be yours?
To a happy life. Yeah, I mean, it feels like all that advice you just gave is a good way of following to get a happy life. But finding the sense of humor to me relates to just looking at the situation you're in and finding the joy in it. Finding that maybe one thing that is okay or making you happy, or,
Yeah.
instead of like focusing
fun.
on the bad thing that's happening, there's probably something okay in
Yeah.
there. So, but that's hard to do. I
And
don't
the
know.
store, the happy life relating to the store is to, instead of just waiting on people and pricing things and making it like Walmart, is actually getting to be knowing the people and talking to the people, and like talking to your wife this morning was fun. We know we're cousins, 10th generation cousins. Eric used to say, how come you're cousins with everyone? And I said, because I talk to them. And
If you talk to someone
I
enough-
found out that we have this ancestor, like Frankie and I have Mary Chilton on the Mayflower. So we're cousins.
But you're right. That is, as far as this store goes,
It's just about the people.
your skill at talking with people is really, really important. And I think it's something where we came in and it was like, there is so much work to do
I know.
here. And we're managing, up to 4 or 6 kids working at a time and all these things. And it's really important to stop and like look people in the eye and like ask little detail questions about
Where
them.
are you
because
from?
that's what they want and that's what keeps them coming back. But also that's you're finding that joy in that moment. Like, people are cool. Humans have really great stories. You would never hear the stories about what the husbands did in their lives
Yeah.
if you didn't sit there and talk to them. And I have to remind myself over and over, because I get a little twitchy back there. I'm like, oh, I'm sitting here talking to someone for so long and I got all these things to do, is that, no, this
That's
is
the
on my
job.
list, is to talk to someone. Like, sit down and do it. So, yeah.
Look him in the eye. I like that.
Yeah.
When I introduce myself, I always make sure I looked him in the eye, not down at my feet.
That's
That's a good life advice.
Yeah, that's
Look
you
them in the
what.
eye and listen.
You can do that.
One of the people that came in the first year, the husband was waiting, the wife was shopping, so we're chatting, and he goes, I have something to recommend you. He said, you know, there's a lot of tired husbands who come in while their husbands are tired while their wives shop, and you should put a bench outside. So we found an old bench, and we put it outside. He came back the next year with his wife, and he came in and he said, I see you took my advice.
Good.
That bench is still there, only slightly rotten.
Right. Everything is slightly rotten.
Yeah.
What thing in Granite Hall has the most helped you prepare you for life?
I'll throw that one to you guys because it had to prepare you for life. Where
Yeah,
my
it's
life,
kind of aimed at mostly at the
yeah,
girls.
right.
They're awful
Well,
quiet.
Maybe,
I'm thinking.
maybe,
Well,
seeing our parents work hard all the time, working
I'd say-
constantly. Now that's what we seem to do.
Why did I do that? To do those one rights?
Has it prepared us?
I don't know if this is like preparing for life, but it sort of has given me life skills in certain ways. And one of the things is that there's always more to everyone's jobs than you think. You know, like some of our vendors come in or delivery people or whatever, and I'm always amazed at like the details behind everybody's jobs and what they have to like do to get to this place or whatever. And I think working in the store with all the different aspects of it has sort of given me this appreciation for just sort of what everyone does in life. It takes a lot to do whatever job you're doing, whether it's the, you know, UPS guy, right? Exactly, the UPS guy coming down the road, and like just how. Even the other day, the UPS guy walked up, and his machine started talking to him, and it said, "Granite Hall store, you can leave the package on the porch, or you can," and like. They've entered our sign into their system that we left out for
22
UPS
back shore.
drivers and telling them where to leave the package and what to do. And I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. I didn't know they did that. I don't know how they did it. So it was all these like little things that come up. And so I try to
But
like
probably
recognize that, yeah.
The biggest thing it taught us to do and prepare is like just valuing community. This place has such a strong community, unlike so many places nowadays. Community's kind of
Yeah.
dying thing, but it's such a tight little village, and you made so many connections for us, and now we're keeping them and making new ones, and that's what this place does. Yeah.
And with all the businesses that have come, the coffee shop's been here 10 years. That was a great addition. Now we have the Row, which is a pub and restaurant,
fun.
which is everybody's loving it, and they go there every night.
What a big improvement. I'm camped out there 5 days out of a week.
Pretty
Yeah.
great. Watch out.
Biggest social time there.
So it's a draw for all these people to come to Round Pond, and people over the years have been telling me, we're actually hoping to find a place here. We find this is such a nice little village,
Everything's selling less than a week.
and they're so expensive now.
Yeah.
But they want to. Summer people want to end up retiring here, and it's a draw. And I feel that it's amazing that we found this place by luck. It was a little ad in there. We had no idea where we were ending up.
You're all lucky.
We were
but
lucky.
Us Round Ponders are lucky that you moved here.
No,
You guys are all top shelf.
no. Okay, thank you.
Now for my next question.
Yes, please.
Confidence is everything in life, no matter what road you get down.
That's true.
Is this your question?
That was just a little added.
No, it's just a comment.
That
Oh,
was a little added Frankie wisdom.
it is, and it
Put
takes
that in.
it takes a lot of I don't know to become confident. There are times
Well,
when
you-
you're not confident.
You gotta
And-
fake it till you make
Yeah,
it.
you got to fake
Frankie
it till you make
thinks
it.
we're confident, but
But sometimes
you
you just
are.
have to
You're
go
also
out.
Very proud of you folks, both of you.
of course, of course.
I'll start with you. What would you like to be remembered for?
Whoa,
That's big with you.
Well,
On with that one for a while.
yeah, well, that's hard to it's hard to say it yourself. It'd be more interesting to say, what are you remembered for? Well, for being a kind person that's interested in everybody and wanting to make connections with people, the customers, the grandchildren, you just have to keep doing the right thing, and hopefully this is a tough question.
If you
Okay.
ran for mayor, you would win by a landslide.
Oh my.
Everybody likes Sarah.
But I would rather be thank you. I'd rather be the pusher from behind. You know what I mean?
Wants to manipulate from
I don't like
Oh,
to
so you're
be
being a little
in
clever.
charge.
Oh.
You know, I'd rather, even in all the organizations that we have around here, I'd rather be the help from behind.
All right, you won't be mayor then.
No, I don't want to be mayor. And I don't want to run for school board ever again. To ask them that question.
Oh, that's a hard one.
It is a hard one. It's hard to focus on yourself.
Here's what I think about is like, I go to local cemeteries, walk around.
You're just
and-
like me.
Yeah, just like you. I am. And you're reading all the names on the stones, and you're like, who are all these people? And who remembers them, basically? Sort of that idea that unless you do something like super life-changing for the world, like discover the cure for cancer, or you're really famous in the movies or something like that, that most of us are going to fade away at some point. So, like, the idea, I mean, I love that my history is going to be connected to this history because I think it is something that is going to last a little bit longer. And honestly, just hoping that stories of us that your kids are going to tell their kids, that kind of memory will be lovely. But I don't have any, like, high expectations that there's going to be memories of me in the larger sense. I do want a gravestone. We're working on my dad's. Still haven't gotten it there.
12 and a half years later.
He's gonna get one though.
I'm having a hand carved. That's why,
Wow.
and it took us 6 years to even be able to figure out
Decide on
what
the
to say.
design. We're really good at deciding things.
Mary did
could put a
Mary
picture
did
on
a
that?
tree of life. No, she's an artist, and she did a tree of life, and so they have to carve this on, and I have trouble making decisions, so
We
I've
did.
left the poor man hanging.
Yeah, hopefully he's doing it now. So anyway, what do you want to be remembered for? As, by, who?
The rebel.
The rebel.
Yeah.
The, yeah. I don't
Best
know.
mother.
Probably back to just sense of humor. Hopefully being kind. Hopefully a little laid back, not too,
Yeah,
laid back and kind, and
that's important. Don't take anything too seriously.
being the rebel.
Did you make up that nickname?
Yep, Frankie made up that nickname back in the day.
The
It
Rebel.
was more relevant. Not so
We
much.
could interview Frankie about you.
was
Get
going
back
to
to that.
give a piece of advice to the next generation, what would it be?
About
I-
the store or just about life?
Well, Mom went through her advice.
I told you.
I botched
Do
number
you-
11 here.
do your homework
Had to
and wear sunscreen. I've already
pinch
told
hit
you.
for me on that one.
I wrote down on my piece of paper to worry less.
Yeah, have fun.
It
That's on my
feels
paper.
like
Have
this
fun.
coming generation has some big worries, and it's not always about big things. And I want to be like, it's okay. You can just when you look back at this time, this is gonna seem like a small thing. So, but
Yes.
that's really hard for kids to hear. Like, in the moment, things are really important.
Yeah, it's a
and
big
so it's
deal.
hard to be like, this isn't important, by the way. You're gonna be fine.
How about live and let live?
That's good.
It's a good one. Be kind.
Can we put that on your gravestone?
Yeah, that's going on my grave.
Let it go. all
Let it
all
go,
the
yeah.
things.
Yeah, well,
let
that's
it go.
worry less and let it go
Yeah.
are very similar.
Have fun and go for a walk. Get outside and
what they want.
don't use your phone as much or your devices. You know whatever.
We've got
Can't
a
even get
lot of
into
them.
that.
Oh,
That's why our childhoods were so good.
right. Drink more water.
Yes, drink more water. That's our final advice.
Yeah.
Actually, just can
Well-
we just have that? Cut out everything else.
And the other thing I used to do is keep records of everything after Eric died.
Oh yeah.
What's the point? What's
Right.
the point? Let it go. Doesn't
Always
matter.
write on the back of your pictures.
Yeah, my mom, their grandmother Nani always said, write on the back of your pictures, you won't remember the date. And just put the date anyway,
But it's kind of true because now you're
it's
like,
totally true.
"Shoot, who was that?
right? All advice is true, you just never follow it.
Oh no.
I
How about you?
reckon,
What's
like,
yours?
Old
It's
people
pouring
don't
out.
give you bad advice. They've lived their life.
They
have
know a
nothing
little
to
bit.
gain. They always give you good advice.
It's whatever they messed up on.
Yes.
They'd say,
Well,
listen,
that's true.
trust me,
Yes. Like
listen to it.
my dad said, people ought to have two lives. One you make all your mistakes in. The second one you go back and correct them all.
I like that.
Aw,
That's
wouldn't that
great.
Be amazing. And yet you wouldn't. You'd just make more mistakes.
Different ones.
Not to be negative.
If you was to do this interview, what question would you ask?
Wow, I didn't prepare. I didn't do my homework and think about it.
Well, looking at you, Jane.
Oh, it's coming.
Get the
back
ball
to me.
rolling here.
Is this about the store, you mean?
Life?
That's what Russ has got down here.
About what question would we ask about stuff
It
about
can
the
be
store?
store, it can be store or life.
Or whatever.
And this is more for me, because
Just to get ideas. And,
exactly.
Yeah. You kind of covered it. I'm trying to think of a question.
I think that hearing people's sort of high school, college years is really fun. Like, people have great, funny stories and memories about that time. Sort of like asking what they did in their like late teens, 20s. I don't know,
Oh,
it seems
yeah.
like a good time of life for people. They're always, it's like right before you have kids and like, what are you doing in life? I just remember when I was in high school talking to people in Damerscott about when they went to Lincoln, and they had all these like crazy stories about like putting outhouses on roofs and like different things, little tricks they did and stuff.
Story.
And
That
I think
knocking it
people
over across the street, Clarabelle.
make funny decisions at that point in their life and stuff. Yeah, so
I decided to go to Germany and get married at 19,
see,
much to my parents' dismay. That was a funny decision. Brought us here eventually.
yeah.
But the stories about how you met your wife or how you got into what you
That's
do for a
true, too.
living or something, but how you met
Those
each
are always
other.
Cute.
Yeah. Jane was, her father-in-law was the headmaster of Lincoln Academy.
Great.
Was you sent to the office with him there?
I might have been. Thanks for bringing that up.
But you know what? If you was, I bet he liked your big attitude, you know it?
I don't know what he thought, but
Chris Frost
Right.
picked her older sister for the Principal's Award, Mary,
Yeah.
but he was gone when you were there.
no, I had him freshman year
Oh, freshman
you
year.
did.
So you got detention freshman year.
in school suspension. Yeah.
Man, me and
I
Russ
do
were
think
lucky.
that's funny.
Me and Russ were lucky in the 1970s. Wow. That was one great era.
It
More
was.
ways than one.
I'm sure better than the '90s. I think.
Yeah, we could get away with all kinds of stuff back then.
Yeah, you really
You
could.
young people couldn't get away with nothing.
No.
Especially in the cell phone era.
Yeah, now you
Being
can't
tracked.
get
Forget
They
it.
track their
I'm
kids.
glad I grew up in the times I did.
Yep. Yep. That was
He'll,
good.
he'll take
But
it out.
the '80s and '90s in Round Pond were
Installed
good too.
something in there. Yeah.
Don't forget. You were there.
But doesn't everyone think they're
I grew up in the
better
50s.
than-
Can't beat that.
I was born in the
Weston,
50s.
Connecticut. I was born in 48. That's funny.
Huh.
Yeah, we had.
Thanks for doing this.
Well, Russ is.
That's
I've run
great.
out of questions, Russ.
There you go. Well,
That means
good job,
we
Frank.
made it to the end.
And
It was great. You guys are wonderful at this. I mean,
We did
we
a
got into
lot
a
of
lot
talk.
of great
Thanks,
detail
Frankie and
here,
Russ.
which I like.
I mean,
Yeah.
I knew that she was gonna give you a lot, and I saw Frank. He'd be staring at his paper, just getting ready to ask.
I was
kind of
hoping you
You'd
would
be like another thing.
I was hoping you'd give us more of
It's still on.
some of the
You can-
stuff that we ought to know about.
Oh yeah. That's for the 79ers interview. That's
Oh
not
my
for
gosh,
this
you
one.
should do that.
Oh,
That would be great.
You know what? She doesn't want her kids to know.
yeah, right.
I was telling him last
They
night they're
already
old
know.
enough now.
Yeah. That's
What's
so
it off?
funny.
Yes, turn
1,
it
2,
off.
3,
I
4,
thought
here
it
we
was.
go.
Thank you. How, well, I wanted to tell you about the fire that happened in the store back in October of 2008. This was one of the biggest events of our stay here. And I was right here behind the counter. It was about a little after 10 when we opened on a fall morning right before Columbus Day. And Elaine Davenport, who lived up the road and used to be in charge of the Lincoln home, came in and she asked me if I was burning wood upstairs. And I said, no, we are not allowed to burn wood anymore. Long ago, the insurance company put the kibosh on our wood stoves. And she just was distraught and said, call 911, your building's on fire. And so I did, but she told me that the smoke was coming out under the eaves upstairs and under the back of the roof. And I got on the phone with 911. We had just one couple of customer in here, and my husband Eric was across the street at the B&B talking to them. And the woman on the emergency response kept saying, don't let anybody go upstairs, get everybody out of the building. She kept me on the phone for the longest time. I was out on the porch and I finally said, can you call somebody? And she said, oh, I did that right away. I just have to keep you on the phone until they come. And I was like, oh. And Gil Yeager was the first on the scene, a fireman, first responder, and he came down. And again, I'm thinking, it's upstairs, it's out back, the fire, go out. And he said, I can't do anything until I get backup. So we had like 4 towns respond. It was a big deal. And one of the customers, the husband, went around back and he found a hose and he was trying to spray the wall. And his wife ran up to the B&B across the street, the Briar Rose, and was trying to get my husband's Eric's attention. And didn't hear that well. And so all of a sudden everybody was looking at him and he goes, what? He said, your building's on fire. So he ran down, he went right upstairs where he wasn't supposed to go. He told me that the flames were coming over the back of the office wall. And so the fire department went through the building. They didn't go out back. They brought all their hoses up through the building and they cut a hole in the roof and they were venting the smoke and then blowing the fire out the back instead. And later they told me that instead of going around and blowing the fire, trying to put the fire out from the outside, that would blow the fire into the building and it would burn down. And they also told me that fires double every 5 minutes once they get going. And this building is so old, it would have been, if it had happened another time, or even if Elaine hadn't noticed it, because I was down here and didn't know anything. I didn't smell it or anything. It could have been gone, or it could have been seriously much worse. So we closed, and the whole community came together to help us. It was really pretty amazing.
Wow.
Becky Recor got a whole bunch of people that helped, clean up and do all the different things. Julie and Fred played at they had a fundraiser. It was called Sweets and Songs, and they played a concert at the Brown Church. And then downstairs, all the helping hands ended up making sweets, and they raised they raised enough money to cover our deductible, which was amazingly wonderful. And about 6 months later, by May, it was all fixed. But Ken Vinyl, who was a local builder at the time, did all the carpentry, and the insurance company, they were really pretty good to work with. They were only going to cover a piece of the back. We had to fix the back roof, but the inside ceiling had been very old, and they were only going to fix the part that in the back. And our adjuster said, "You can't do that. You know, it would look ridiculous." So they ended up replacing the ceiling, and which was nice. And so that was a pretty major event at the time.
I would say so. Holy cow.
Yeah, I was afraid that the building would burn down. Eric and I were sitting over on the bench watching all this at the antique shop, and I was just like thinking of losing the history. That's all that bothered me. I thought of all those ghosts dancing at those dances upstairs, and you know, it wasn't the store or our business. It was just the history of this building. It was like a tragic, you know, thought if we lost that building.
Okie dokie.
All right. Many years ago, a couple moved to town, Jaja and Dave Martin, and they'd been living on a boat for 20 years, and they sailed into Round Pond Harbor and decided they would put down roots. So they stayed in the community, and over the years, they've been just such wonderful friends and neighbors, and they would come to our Halloween. We'd have a Halloween kind of a haunted house, and Dave and Jaja would help Crystal McLaughlin, who worked for us, set up this haunted house, and all the local kids would come in and trick or treat on Halloween, and they would dress up too. And we had maybe 80 kids the first year, and sometimes we'd give them out grab bags of candy. We'd have 80 to 100 kids, and then there'd be a dip where certain years there weren't that many kids because they all started going to Glidden Street, where they could walk up and down in Newcastle. But Joshua also brought in at Christmas time a gingerbread house, and she would just leave it for us. It was just out of the kindness of her heart. And here's a picture of one of them, but they were all different. Every year there were granite halls, there were ships, there were candy counters, there was the back takeout window, but every year it was something different. And it was always a surprise to see. But they are wonderful neighbors. All right. Well, for the millennium, the year 2000 coming up, everybody was a little concerned about what was going to happen, whether everything was going to melt down on...
Y2K was it?
Yes, right. What was going to happen at midnight. And I'm not sure where the idea came from, if it was a customer, somebody local, but we decided to have a community gathering upstairs. We had to move we were closed for the season, and we had to move everything off the dance hall floor. And we billed it as a New Year's Eve potluck and music community gathering for the 2000. And Julia and Fred Gosby of Castle Bay played, and we all the neighbors brought food, and there was some dancing, which was fun. They played Lady of the Lake. I think I told you earlier about that being one of the dances that were played up here. And they were on the stage. There was no railing or anything at the time, so they were playing. And they taught a group how to play Lady of the Lake. And so that was going to be the only time. But 2 years later, people said, "Are you ever going to do that again? You should do that again." And so in 2002, we did it again and had another gathering. It was just open to anybody that wanted to come. And it was, the first one, we stayed till midnight. Never again. We're this little village of Round Pond. It got earlier and earlier. 7 to midnight, ooh, that's a long time. And 7 to 11, then 7 to 10, and now most people are, gone by 9:30 to 9 to 9:30 to 10. So again, it's a lot of work cleaning everything out of the upstairs, and we put all the fixtures in the back room downstairs, and it was cold, and we had the fires go. Oh no, we didn't have the fires going. We had the heat on, and so we didn't do it again. I don't think we did it again until the year after the fire, but it was such a relief, and we wanted to celebrate that the Granite Hall survived. We had another gathering in 2009, the year after this was all fixed up. And we've had one ever since. So up until last year was 2024, and that would have made 18. They weren't consecutive for these 40 years, but, just lots of neighbors come out, and they bring good food, and we have a table with food and drink, and sometimes several people come back the next morning to help clean away all the rubble and so forth. And it's been quite a lovely tradition over the years.
Sounds like it. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. And while we're at it, you're focused. I don't know if you can focus up on the. That's the old silent movie screen that's still there. When they used to, we unrolled it once. The camera's up at the Northeast Historic Film Association, where they showed what they showed them on, and ooh, that's not good. That is a poster over there of a silent movie.
I got that one.
You got that one, okay. And the piano is still up in the corner.
Piano, wow.
Yeah. And one time a man asked, he had twins, and he was a summer person, and his twins were studying the piano, and he asked if they could come up and practice here. So they used this piano to practice on while they were vacationing. But they used to play for the silent movies, and they used to play for the dances. And way back in the 80s, when we first came, I used to hear stories of people coming in to tell me their grandmother played the piano up here, or their, father played the fiddle. So now time has gone by, and I don't hear those stories as much. But anyway, it's still tunes up pretty well, considering.